Welcome back to the channel, everyone. In this video I want to show you what I grow in my arid or desert bed in the UK. Let's get straight into that video.
Great northern exotic, botanist vibes hypnotic. Cacti in the crib, got the desert symbolic.
So regular viewers of the channel will have seen lots of this in previous videos, but if anyone's new, I want to go through some of the plants that I grow in this desert bed or arid bed, and hopefully give people some inspiration if they're thinking of doing something similar. And we'll take a look at the hardiness and whatnot of each plant. So I mean, first things first is it's about 3 meters by 4 meters, and full of gravel, hardcore building rubble, down to about 30 centimeters, and it does get cover in winter. And I have got a video on building last year's shelter, so it doesn't get any water, it doesn't get rained on from about October until end of April really, and then I don't water it in summer. So I think the most iconic plants you might consider in the arid bed in the UK would be Opuntia or prickly pear. So you can see there is one example. So this is the biggest Opuntia that I grow, which is a Opuntia ficus-indica, and you can see that even though these new pads, it has got a lot of new pads, I'll just zoom out a little bit, it's got a lot of new pads this year, and they've got very small spines, but they're sort of soft, you know, they do break off. The older pads don't have any. There's like, it's pretty smooth, no glaucids, and no spines really on there. And yeah, I think this is a good child-friendly one. If you're growing something, growing an Opuntia, I do recommend this one. I mean, it looks great. It's much bigger than the other hardier Opuntias that you can grow in the UK, and it's the least hardiest Opuntia that I grow. But it has survived. I did wrap it a little bit extra in winter, and you can see if I zoom in on that first pad there. So these obviously turn into trees in the wild with a cylindrical trunk. So this is bulking up a lot, and I can see signs of corking on it, which I think is great. It just means it's strengthening, turning woody. So it should be you see there, the sort of corking on it. It should be hardening up. I might take a few pads off to propagate, and this one is one that you can get fruit from, and it should be edible. This is the main one, like in Mexico and southwest United States. This is the one that you get prickly pear fruit from, and you can also eat the pads when they're pretty new. There's a bit of weird scarring on it there, look, you can see. I don't know whether it's too much water or if it was too wet, I don't know. I've got a few other varieties of prickly pear in, so I've got, moving round, these ones are hardier than that one. So this one here, I'm in the shadow, oh, there's my shadow there, but you can see there, this is Opuntia ficantha. Smaller growing, horrible glaucids on it. Doesn't look spiky, but these glaucids are killers. This one flowers really well for me, even though it's only 3 pads. I saw a large one of those in Cambridge Botanical Gardens, totally, you know, out in the open over winter. It did really well. So that's Opuntia ficantha. Another Opuntia I've got is Shearii, and I've got 2 of them. So here's one at the back there with a few pads on it, and here is another out the back there. Look, you can see down there, got another one down there that is a rooted pad but hasn't got any new growth on that from this year. Now, Opuntia Shearii is horribly glaucidy, if that's a word. Not nice at all to touch, so That's the reason why I've got them at the back of the bed. But they are super hardy. I think probably without even covering them if they're in the right spot. When I went to David Quayle's garden, and again I've done a video on that as well, he had one up in the hills of Bingley and Bradford, totally uncovered, and it was yeah, fantastic. And then I've got two in pots as well. If you can see these two here that have flowered with the purple fruits on, these are Opuntia vulgaris, and I got them both from Asda. And even though they're in pots sunk into the ground, I am going to leave them out, and they are pretty hardy in the UK. The reason they're in pots is because they're not going to live here long term, so I will be getting rid of them from this bed and having them in pots by the front door. But Opuntia vulgaris, they were a tenner each from Asda, and they are fully hardy in the UK. Horrible glaucus as well. So they're the Opuntia that I've got in this bed, the prickly pears. The other one that you might hear about in the UK is Opuntia humifusa. That's it. Opuntia humifusa, which is an eastern prickly pear, which is supposedly the hardiest prickly pear or Opuntia in the world, because it grows the most northerly in North America up into Canada, and it is the one that's really struggled for me. That has rotted. I have got 2 pads left, but it is a really small, the pads for me are like 5 centimeters in diameter, so it's the smallest of all the Opuntia that I've got, and it does kind of grow along the ground. It's sort of flat, it's not upright. So I'm going to try that one again, but it hasn't worked well for me so far. So that's the Opuntia or prickly pear. So the next group of plants I'll probably talk about are the agaves. So agaves are another iconic plant for desert and arid planting schemes and beds, and you can see I've got 2 main ones here in the bed, this one and this one, and they're both Agave Americana. One is variegated, one is not, and you can see that both of them are producing pups. So if I zoom in here, you can see a pup there, and there's also one or a few on that one. So Agave Americana are probably the most common agave in the UK, the ones that you're more likely to see in garden centres rather than specialist nurseries, and you probably see them in planting schemes, in public planting schemes down south, on the south coast or down in Cornwall. They're not the hardiest, but I've got these in as a sort of a filler for now, with a plan to replace them with hardier varieties later. But they do, I mean, they've both done really well for me, sized up very quickly. I've also got one in a pot there that's just filling a gap for now. Then I've got an Agave Funkiana, which should be pretty hardy even though it's in a pot. But ultimately I'm moving on to even hardier species of agave. So for example, Agave Parii, Agave Varieties, Agave Montana. These are all relatively hardy for the UK. I've got in there a smaller Agave Parii, and it's a subspecies Neo-Mexicana, and that one is yeah, relatively small, but hopefully it will eventually size up and do really well in this bed. So they're my agaves at the minute, and again I'm just sort of working towards, I've got the hardy varieties sizing up in the greenhouse. One really good filler plant that you should get for your arid bed is the lace aloe, the Aristaloe Aristata, which is this one here. Now this one is looking, well, all of them actually in the bed are looking pretty sun-stressed and purple, but these, you can get these anywhere. These, usually you see them as houseplants, but they are absolutely hardy in the UK. There's one there, look, that's looking a bit greener, which did flower. They get nice orange flowers on it. And and I've kind of dotted them around because they sort of produce a lot of offsets, and then you can dot them around the bed, and they're not, you know, they don't look fantastic on their own, but they are a good plant to dot around to fill gaps around the bed. That's Aristaloe Aristata, and it's sort of a well, I think it used to be an aloe and it's not anymore. Speaking of aloes, I mean, that is the hardiest one you can get of the aloe type plants, and then this is the other one, which is used to be Aloe Striatula, the striped aloe, and now it's called Aleoamphilus Striatula. So this big beast here flowered for me. I had one sort of stalk in there in the ground, and you can see if I zoom in there, these are all producing, it's now producing offsets down there, and hopefully they will flower next year. Some people say that it will die back to the ground usually if it's not protected, and re-sprout from the roots. But that one for me, if I zoom in there, was again undercover, did really well, flowered. So I'm hopeful that those offsets down there will flower. But they are the two aloe type plants in the bed. And if you're looking for something similar to an aloe to give the same sort of effect, I would recommend Euphorbia Red Yucca, because they kind of look, some species of those look similar. I think Euphorbia northii is a really good option. Elsewhere in the bed, I've got some Echeveria. Now this is if you buy an Echeveria from your local garden centre, you're probably going to get this one, which I think is Agaves. Lots of offsets there. I put that one in the ground as a single rosette, I think last year, and it's produced a lot of offsets. It's doing really well. And then this one that I forgot the name of, that I got given, and again, if you look behind it, you can see a lot of offsets there. But if you get hold of some species of Echeveria, I think they look really good in an arid bed. And I don't think an arid bed will be complete without a barrel cactus, or maybe a columnar cactus, depending on what form you get. Now this one is Serentia bruchii, or bruchii, which flowered for me. Produced 2 flowers this year and has done really well. It's just a bit of a gamble putting that in here, and I didn't know what it was. It was unlabelled, but I guessed it was a Serentia formosa. It turned out to be a bruchii because it had reddish leaves, reddish flowers, but it's done really well. So if you can seek out some columnar or barrel cacti, I think it really plays the part.
In every corner they spring, green thumb glow, make the homestead sing. Humidity.
Okay, we'll have a little mention for the palm tree at the back there. Now, you might not consider palm trees arid planting, and I suppose it's not. And if you're looking at palm trees and you're a beginner, you're probably looking at something like that, Trachycarpus over there, which is the most common palm tree in cultivation in the UK. But this one, not as hardy. It's a Washingtonia. Well, it was labelled as a Washingtonia robusta, but I think it's a cross with a filifera, a filibuster, looking at the filaments on the edge of the leaves. Now this did spear pull for me in winter. They are not fully hardy, and you can see it's, look at the frond there that's sort of damaged from the winter, but it has bounced back. Not to everyone's taste, and for me it's not a long-term prospect up in the where I am in Yorkshire. But if you live on the south coast again, or even central London, I've seen huge Washingtonia palms doing really well. So something to consider, but not to everyone's taste. Some people think it's not strictly arid, but that's up to you. Another species, another genus of plant that you really want to consider are yuccas. And I think the best one you can get, and mine's not a great example of that, but it's a yucca rostrata. Mine's looking a bit sickly. You see it's browned off a lot, but the new growth does look green. A Yucca rostrata or a beaked yucca is one you should consider. I've also got a Yucca linearis or Linearifolia, where the leaves are finer and more rounded. I've got another younger Yucca rostrata, double-headed one, just at the back there. And then I've got, which are not as nice looking, but I've also got them, which is a filamentosa. There's a Yucca filamentosa there. I've got another one there that's not doing very well. So seek out some Yucca rostrata. I'm seeing more and more in local garden centres now, even small ones for £20 or £30. It's a no-brainer for me because they are tough as old boots. So make sure you add a Yucca to your list. We're going to finish off with a few sort of odds and ends of plants. Really, they don't fit into any categories. I put this in this year. It's a Euphorbia mercenites, something like that. But I think some Euphorbia do work really well. Obviously, I've got Euphorbia elsewhere in the garden. It's a big genus, but I think this one looks pretty good for arid planting. And the other one that I love is this little Hesperaloe parviflora, the red yucca. It's not even a yucca. Hasn't flowered for me yet, but I'm looking forward to it flowering in the next couple of years. Really nice plant, and you see this a lot in landscape. Like again, if you travel, and I've never been myself, but I've seen photos of southwest USA into Mexico. You see these a lot in like car park planting and municipal planting schemes. It's a Hesperaloe parviflora, and I would recommend seeking one out. A bit more specialist, probably have to go to a specialist nursery for that. But there you go. The other thing I would mention is consider what your surface dressing is going to be like. This is Yorkshire cream stone, but I've got like building rubble hardcore underneath as well, and I think having that mixture of sizes creates more of a naturalistic planting scheme. So there you go. That's my arid bed. Thanks for watching. Please consider giving this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.